Now that we have understood that the way to persist data is to use Docker storage, wherein we would use either Docker mount or Docker volume, first let us see how we can make use of the Docker bind mount feature. Now, whether you want to do bind mount or volume, mind you, for both of them with Docker run, we have to use the option volume or mount options. So I repeat, do not get confused that volume should be used with Docker volume and mount should be used with Docker bind mount. No, it is nothing like that. Both the things can be used for both the purposes. Volume and mount both are the options available in case of bind mount, and the same options are also available for volume. So right now, first let us see the syntax of these two. The difference also we will consider. Hyphen volume consists of 3 fields. That means after volume we have to provide 3 fields separated by colon. The first field is supposed to be the path of the file or directory on the host machine. On the host machine, whatever is the directory we have, that should be the first part, and of course that is for bind mount. But what if I am working with volume? Now there are two types of volumes. One is called as named volume and the other is called as anonymous volume. If at all we are using named volume, the first part is supposed to be the name of the volume. And of course if that volume exists, good and fine. If the volume does not exist, it would be automatically created. And of course when we want to work with anonymous volume, that part should be omitted. That should not be there at all. The second part, that is after colon, the second part is supposed to be the file or directory of the container, the mounted file or directory in the container. And of course the third part, which is optional, can be a comma separated list of options, like RO is one of the options, which is basically used for read only. So like this we have got mount options also. Mount option is little more friendly. It has got a key value pair separated by comma, and these key value pairs are supposed to be put in any order, doesn't really matter. So what are these key value pairs? Now first key is supposed to be type. The value of type can be either bind in case of bind mount, volume in case of volume, and of course if you are using temporary file system, if you can use TMPFS, that is in Linux. Then we have got source. Source is the folder from where we want to copy, which we want to mount to the container. And of course for volume it is supposed to be the volume name, and in case of source mount, remember it can be specified either in SRC or in source. Both the options can be used. You don't have to explicitly mention source. Likewise, destination is supposed to be the directory which is mounted in the container. So source is host, destination is container, and then again here also you have the provision for specifying options. Now what is the basic difference between both of them? The biggest difference is that -v syntax combines all the options together in one field, whereas mount syntax separates them. And of course if you are a new beginner and if you want to do bind mount, it is recommended to use the mount syntax, which is simpler than using volume syntax. So I have my same old project which I have it here, and I want to mount this into my application. I want to mount this directory, I want to run this through a container. Now before I run this through a container, I would like to make a small change. Here I am trying to create a file called as counter.bin in the application folder. Now if I create it in application folder, every time we run, a new application folder would be created, and we would not have that application folder mapped to the host drive. So what I'll do is here I'll hard code it. I'll say /data, or let's call it as my data. So I want to now have something called as my data. In my data I would like to have a file called as counter.bin. That is my requirement. Now the reason I have put slash is I want it to be the root folder. My data /counter.bin. Now what I'm going to do, when I'm going to create a package out of it, the image out of it, At the time of executing that image, I will see that the directory of host is mapped to the container my data, and in that counter.bin is going to get created and saved. So let me save this program. Go to first confirm whether we are in Windows container, or yeah, we are right now in Windows container. So go to terminal. Now first build docker build -t and the Sony / storage demo and give dot. So let it build the Windows container very quickly. Sorry, the Windows image, which I would like to execute thereafter using the option mount. I would like to use the mount option. So what is the mount syntax? Let me execute it here. Let me put it here. Docker run -- or hyphen you call it mount, and followed by that we are supposed to give source. This source in my case I am giving it as C:/ some temp folder, comma destination, and we know that destination is supposed to be in our case C:/ app or my data. Sorry, my data. This I'll put it in D drive because that may not be. And third, we want to specify type, and type in our case is supposed to be mount. So I take you to this and you see I've used type, sorry, not mount, it is supposed to be bind. Type is supposed to be bind. And of course, finally, give the image name. Copy this command and execute here. Invalid argument source, mount, unexpected key, destination. Let's spell it. Yes, we got the value 1. Let me execute the same command once again. This time we are supposed to get the value 2. And every time I execute, I'm going to get the incremented value. Why? Because the file which is created in C:/ my data counter.bin, that file actually is mapped to, in my local drive, C:/ temp, sorry, D:/ temp, and I have it here, counter.bin. Of course, if I delete this and run the same container once again, new container, and we'll get 1. And this is actually the problem with bind mount. We are able to directly manage the local file system outside Docker, and we should get 1. Yes. So this is the bind mount syntax which we have used. Now if I am using volume syntax, so say docker run -- volume, or just say -v, even that is fine. We want to map D:/ temp : C:/ temp and space the image name / storage demo, and we should get 2. Oh, error. Why error? Because here also I gave C:/ temp instead of giving what? I'm supposed to give C:/ my data. So give C:/ my data and now run. you'll see that c colon slash my data. See, we got 2. Run the same container once again. We should get 3 and so on. But again, with the same syntax, remember, we are already mapped to, again, d colon temp, you'll find that the file has been created. So whether it is volume option or whether it is mount option, in either case, because we are specifying a fixed path of the host, it is actually using the bind mount feature and not the volume feature. What is volume? That I'll be showing you in the next window. But even before I go to that, let me now switch to Linux container. Now we are in Linux. So first, let us rebuild it. Let us rebuild the container for Linux. I mean the image we have to rebuild for the Linux version. And we have it. Source code has not changed. Nothing has changed. I'm just rebuilding it. Whatever I've used for Windows, the same project I have used now for Linux. And in Linux, again, we can make use of the same bind syntax. The mount. But now we cannot specify c colon my data. It is supposed to be slash my data. And something similar here. Maybe slash. Let's call it as USR. Run this. We got 1. Run the same thing again. We'll get 2. Run the same thing again. We'll get 3. So, of course, can I change this to volume syntax? Yes. Volume. Just give here slash USR and give here slash my data 4, and it's continuing. So you have to be very careful when you are executing for Windows container. It is supposed to be c colon d colon like that, whereas if it is Linux container, you have to simply use slash. So that is the point you have to take care of. In either case, the folder should be existing. So what if I give here user2 slash, we got 1. Why? User2 is a new folder. But what if I use mount? In mount, I am giving now, let's say user2. I got 2. So if the folder is not there, it is getting created. In either case, if the folder is not there, it gets created. And in that folder, the content is saved. Very, very, very important. 2 different ways, minus mount option, minus mount option, or minus volume option. But both of them are doing same thing, just that the way they are used is different. I'll again prefer using mount option as it is little more convenient to mention key value pairs comma separated. Before I end this session, let me actually do something different. Like I like to execute docker command, docker run, give -it. I want to get into the container instance interactively, and I give Ubuntu image, execute the command bash. But now I would also mention mount what? Maybe my USR folder, source is equal to USR, comma, destination is equal to something, say my data, and of course type is equal to bind. Run. So we are into Ubuntu. Just say ls and you see here we have got my data. There should be my data, and it has nothing. Now you have to be little careful when you're working with Docker for Windows. Even if you create a particular folder here, mkdir some demo, or if you create a file over here, whatever you do here, remember that it is not going to reflect in your C drive, because Windows operating system creates a virtual machine for Docker, and on that virtual machine the container instance is executing. So there is no way you can figure out that by doing something in this, some folder got created in this. But I can demonstrate the same thing by switching to Windows. I go to Windows container, and now first come out, because now type Docker images. These are all Docker images which we have on Windows, right? One of them is Nano Server. We can probably use that, Microsoft/Nano Server. So I run the same command, but just that Ubuntu Bash is replaced with Microsoft/Nano Server and cmd.exe. Obviously the path is incorrect because now we are using. So I give here c:/, let's say temp, rather d:/temp, and in destination c:/my data. d:/temp, oh, d:/temp only, not /user. And we'll get into the container because we are running it interactively. Yes, we are here. Now if I say cd my data, obviously when I say dir, this is actually the directory structure of my D drive temp folder. Same things I have here. Some EMP thumbnail web app or whatever. So this is very, very important. Bind mount is actually mapping the host directory to the container virtual directory, we can say, because that's not actual directory. But yes, anything which I do here will reflect in the container, and anything which I do in container will reflect in the host. So this is all about bind mount. Thank you.